right. Good morning and welcome everybody to your Healthy Self podcast and webinar. This is your host, Cade Archibald, uh, one of the co-founders of Anodyne Pain and Wellness, and really excited to be here with everybody today. We got a really cool guest that I'm going to introduce here in a minute, and as the usual, we got our fearless leader and original founder of East West Health and Anodyne Pain and Wellness, Regan Archibald. So we got a really cool show today that we're going to be jumping into. Before we get into that, want to just go over last night we had our Health Accelerator course meetup last night. So our hack, if you're not involved in that yet at this point, go to our website and get registered for that. This is where we really dive into solution, like really get into tactics on how to get your health to the next level. That's why it's called the Health Accelerator course. Right now we're focused on a 100-day fat burning challenge, and you can jump in at any time. So go to acueastwest.com/hack, HAC. So take a look at that. Our challenge this week, just starting last night, hydration. So hopefully everyone last night got some really good hydration with some good electrolytes and minerals in your water, some lemon juice, salt, and started off this morning the same way. I had a killer workout and then made sure I got some extra electrolytes and water this morning. So I'm on the right track, Reagan.
That's awesome. Well done. Good. I'm getting hydrated right now too.
Awesome. Well, today, so Reagan's going to be diving into some really cool insights with our guest today. So our special guest is Dr. Beverly Lawrence. She is a licensed acupuncturist, naturopathic, medical school TA, author, speaker, metaphysician, entrepreneur, workshop leader, and researcher. So amazing. She's done some really innovative and interesting work around neuropathy with microcurrent. And so we're going to be talking a little bit about that today. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Reagan, but welcome Dr. Beverly Lawrence.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
Good to have you here, Dr. Lawrence. So appreciate you joining and thanks everybody for being part of Your Healthy Self. Love having this community. And Dr. Beverly, we met over on Lotus. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, you're on one of my trainings and I appreciate all the insights you provided there. And it's really good to have you on today.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been taking all your classes at Lotus for quite a long time.
Have you really?
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. I appreciate that. Yeah,
Yeah.
been on that platform for quite some time now. It's
Yes.
been great. Oh, that's beautiful. And you're a fellow teacher and you love to inspire other practitioners and patients alike. And you're the thing I love the most when we were looking into, hey, should we have Dr. Beverly come talk about neuropathy? I said, absolutely, because she's got a clinic named Dancing Bear, and who else has that? So what is, tell me a little bit about your name and about your background, and I'm fascinated by it.
Well, I was in the computer industry in Silicon Valley for many years. I had a consulting company there, and then I got very sick. And someone told me to meditate, and I started meditating and went on a whole nother path and studied shamanism and energy healing and all kinds of things and got myself healthy again and decided I wanted to go to medical school. Went to naturopathic school first, then acupuncture school. But I needed to name my business, and I wasn't very good at naming things. So I went on a shamanic journey, and I asked for the name to use, and I was told to use Dancing Bear. So I started the Dancing Bear Healing Center in Chandler. Unfortunately, COVID shut that down. So I'm going to start an online business called Dancing Bear Enlightenment Academy, where I teach my meditation classes and other spiritual classes. And then I'll reopen. I moved to another city, so then I'll reopen my clinic here once I get this other business going again.
Great. Well, it's a phenomenal name, and I've done work with shamans myself, and it's always been transformative. So yeah, when you get the clear insight like that, you know you're on the right track.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah, you'll find out, right? For
Yeah,
now, yes.
we'll find out.
I love that. So you've done a lot of work, I mean, in so many different parts of healing. It's phenomenal. You have more credentials behind your name. I didn't even know what half of them mean, which is awesome. So you're a perpetual student,
Yes.
is what it tells me. And so you love learning.
Yeah, and because of you, I've joined FMU and I'm studying functional medicine. So I'll add that to my practice once I graduate.
Yay. Oh, very cool. Oh, that's so awesome. So, one thing I'm been fascinated with is neuropathy and some of its roots. It's funny because I'll treat 10 patients with neuropathy and get 100% success. Then I'll treat the next 10 and they don't respond to the same treatment. So why is that? And what are some of the underlying roots of the causes of neuropathy that you found? And then what's some of your research led? What direction has your research led you in?
Well, the number one cause, according to, if you do research statistics on the internet, they'll say 80% is diabetic neuropathy. And it's true that diabetic neuropathy is very common. One of them, I believe, is because of a particular drug that gets prescribed that depletes your B vitamins. So a lot of times the patient is deficient, and it can be 1, 3, 6, or 12, or all of them. A lot of people don't eat enough vegetables and things, and that's one of the problems. But there's chemotherapy. Certain chemotherapies can deplete swollen feet and ankles, which there's many, many causes. It could be kidneys, could be heart. There's lack of exercise, poor lymph flow. So there's many reasons. So you have to treat the underlying cause. The worst case I had was a patient a long, long time ago. He came in and his feet were literally blue and they felt like ice when I touched them. He had no hair on his legs from the knees down, and the skin was peeling off of his legs. And I cringed when I saw that because my father lost both of his feet to neuropathy. And I was a young practitioner at that time. I hadn't been in practice very long, and I says, I am determined to help this man. And
Wow.
it took 9 months, but after 9 months and some diet changes, he walked without a cane. He had hair all the way down onto his toes. His feet were normal and pink again. So we saved his feet. And I
Wow.
decided I'm going to make that my specialty because that's probably the worst I've ever seen. Although I have seen someone else with gangrene. So when you've got sores on the feet, you've really got to address it. And I studied with a guy called Bigfoot who lives out in the desert in Arizona.
Yeah.
And he said you can treat it with honey. So I said, she refused to go to a medical doctor. I said, you got to go to a medical doctor. No. So I said, then go home and put honey on your feet. So you slowly drip like manuka or something, honey on the feet. And that got rid of the gangrene, and it was just a little bit of a red sore. So then she was willing to go to the doctor and have it looked at. And they only had to remove the tip of her toe rather than the whole toe. But if
Wow.
you don't catch that right away, then you end up like my dad did. I don't know how you end up with your whole foot gangrene. It's horrible. If you've ever seen that, it smells and it's terrible. One of the references that I used in my study was some podiatrists who also did a study with the same device that were treating wounds. And that's the biggest problem with neuropathy is if you get a wound, you don't know it, and it can get worse and worse. It can get infected, and then that's what eventually leads to gangrene. So it can be quite serious. And people don't typically come into the clinic saying, I have neuropathy. They have back pain, they have this pain, they have that problem, and they don't even know they have neuropathy. So I have a 7 point, I took some classes specific from other acupuncturists on how to treat neuropathy.
Mhm.
And I came up with a 7-point test, which is it's also used by podiatrists and other practitioners to test how numb are you, because
Uh-huh.
scale of 1 to 10, how much pain is there? People can give you a number, but how
Right.
numb are you? They can't tell. And
Yeah.
there's different kinds of numbness. There's vibrational, there's heat, there's cold, there's room temperature. So
Um,
I have a 7-point scale that I use, and I'll test them, and that you have neuropathy, and they'll go, oh, is that why I feel this or feel that, or I have tingling in my toes? Yeah, that's your body telling you have a problem. And it ends up with 3 problems. One is the feet get cold. It can happen in the hands, but it happens in the feet first. So they
mm,
get cold because of the poor circulation, and as a result, the oxygenated blood is reduced, and the deoxygenated fluids are not being removed.
mm,
So one of the things we looked for in the test, we used digital imaging, and it would tell us the temperature, the local temperature of the foot, the internal temperature. And it would tell us the oxygenation and the deoxygenation. So you wanted the temperature to go up, the oxygenation to go up, and the deoxygenation you wanted to go down, because you wanted the deoxygenated fluids to be moved out. So we did before and after testing, and we found we had them use the devices for 1 hour every day for 6 weeks.
mm-hmm.
And after 6 weeks, we also had another device that sort of prep, because we weren't doing acupuncture. If you
Yeah.
do acupuncture, you don't need the other device. But because we weren't doing any acupuncture, we used this other device that had light. And so it sort of prepped the area. So the people that didn't have that light, they had an increase in pain.
Mm,
But if you're doing acupuncture with the microcurrent, you're not going to have that problem, because you're addressing the pain with the needles. Um, so the patients that used the light device with the microcurrent all experienced an increase in temperature, an increase in oxygenation, and a decrease in deoxygenation. So we were quite happy with the results after only 6 weeks. Now, I don't recommend doing it daily, because you can overcharge. You know what that means when you
oh,
have
yeah.
too much excess. You don't
Yeah.
need excess, yeah. So I think 2 to 3 times a week is adequate.
Yeah.
And so that's what I do with my patients with severe neuropathy. It's 2 to 3 times a week. And then, maybe if it was 3 times a week, then after a while, twice a week, and then once a week. But always addressing the underlying cause. So if it's diabetic, but I found it's not always diabetic. A lot of people just don't know they have neuropathy. So it's usually some kind of nutritional deficiency. It could be some kind of nerve damage. So you
Mhm.
have to look at their meds, and not just their current meds, but what were they on when it happened. And then you look up and read all that little fine print that they don't want you to know about, that you
Yeah.
need a magnifying glass. And somewhere in there it'll say may cause neuropathy, or it may cause a certain depletion of certain vitamins.
Yeah.
And so that's what you have to address.
Now that's fascinating. And if we looked at that, so we'll just, let's define neuropathy, because I think that's important. Some of our listeners may not even know what neuropathy is, but how would you define it?
Um, Well, I would just say it's a numbness, but it can be there's many different definitions of numbness. So it's just the more technical would be the improper flow of blood to the area.
Yeah. Okay. With some nerve,
Yeah.
because the blood flow follows the nerves. So we learned this great acronym in school called VAN.
And yeah,
Veins, arteries, and your nerves. They all flow together, and
right.
and a lot of people don't realize that. And so anywhere there's a blood vessel, you're going to find a nerve. And those nerves in peripheral neuropathy, when they get diseased, now you're getting a missed signal from the brain to the feet, or the brain to the hands. Or central neuropathy is the whole nervous system. And have you seen patients with central neuropathy? That's just
No.
miserable. I've treated a fair amount of central neuropathy, and they literally tell me it feels like spiders are crawling inside of their body. And they
Oh,
say it's the worst experience because that just disrupts every single thing in their life. One of my favorite patients, we were treating him for neuropathy, and we actually got his feet to the point where he could feel hot and cold again. He started to walk without his walker, but he had central neuropathy and he forgot to put a CPAP machine on, and he passed away that night. So,
oh,
and I just had seen him the day before and he was doing awesome. And he completely forgot to put on his CPAP, but because he had central neuropathy, his body couldn't breathe on its own when he was asleep. And so neuropathy can be deadly.
yeah. And it can be painful. A lot of people notice the tingling or they'll get sharp pains. So, especially in the big toe, it usually starts in the big toe.
Yeah.
And then it'll start moving to the other toes. And that's what people will notice is the pain first. And it's the nerves not getting the blood flow to them.
Yeah.
And or if it's swollen feet, the swelling can pinch the nerves so they can't react properly. Of course, like you're talking about electrolytes, that's another issue. When people don't get proper electrolytes, then the nerves don't work right either.
Yeah.
So
That's,
it can be complicated.
yeah. And I think this is where it goes back to what you said originally, which I 100% agree with, is look at the root cause, because neuropathy, I mean, it can be heavy metal toxicity.
Mhm.
Smokers have more because
Mhm.
the cadmium they're inhaling all the time. I mean, there's all these things that you want to look at and really define. But one of the things I'm really interested in, I hope this I don't throw you off course too much, but if you look at it from like a more of a deeper kind of shamanic healing type of root cause, what's going on from more of a spiritual perspective in the individuals you've worked with who have neuropathy?
Well, the feet have to do with moving forward.
Mm.
So it could be they have a fear and they don't want to move forward in life, or they don't want to take responsibility for their life, and so they're numbing it off. So probably fear would be a major root cause. And that's a big problem today with a lot of people is they've been overcome with a lot of fear because of COVID and masking and everything else.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, even your kidney meridian starts at the bottom of the foot,
And
and
that's fear.
that's, yes, fear is the emotion that most impacts the kidneys. So
Yeah.
yeah, very fascinating. And the opposite of fear is wisdom, right? And so where it's like you have confidence to start moving forward. And so how important is it for patients who have neuropathy to actually look at these psychological impacts?
Well, as you know, acupuncture looks at the psychology as well as the physical. So it's important to look at the feelings. I'm also a hypnotherapist, so
Mm.
sometimes I weave that in while they're on the table, and I just sort of do a little hypnotherapy type work with them to help them move beyond whatever's holding them back. And then I'll do energy work because just treating the symptoms isn't always enough. And layering is when you use multiple modalities at the same time is much more effective. For some people who don't even know they're sick and have a problem, it can be challenging. And a lot of these people are older. So the cancer people will a lot of times be younger, but the people with neuropathy are usually over 60. And sometimes they're 70, 80 years old and they just don't want to change their diet. They don't want to change their lifestyle. And that's the biggest challenge is getting them to accept the fact that they have an issue, that if they don't do anything, then eventually they may not even be able to walk. They'll be in a wheelchair because they can't stand. And try and get them to make that change. Like that first patient I mentioned, he says, I'm this old, I've been this old, I'm never going to eat vegetables. He hated vegetables. I
Wow.
talked his wife into making some vegetables and he tried to eat them and spit them out. So what yeah, I know. So what I
Poor
did
kid.
is I got some phytovitamins. They're they're
Yeah.
they're pills that you could take, but they're complete phytovitamins, and he would take those, and that's what
Um,
helped him. So you just have to find ways that work within their paradigm and that
Sure.
they'll accept.
Yeah, it's kind of funny when you think my feet are totally numb, and if I could eat vegetables, it might really improve my feet. But no, I don't like the way they taste, so I'm not going to eat them. Like yeah, that's just so foreign to me. Like I eat the weirdest. Well, you do too. I mean, in Chinese medicine,
Yeah.
we're eating, like snake and we cordyceps, which is like this weird fungus, parasite organism. I mean, like we eat
Really?
the weirdest things because we realize that that's going to improve health, and that's so foreign to some people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so this metaphysical side is fascinating. I mean, your PhD, one of your many degrees, is in the meta from the University of Metaphysical Sciences. Is that
Mhm.
correct?
Yes. My dissertation was on frequency healing because I'm
Mhm.
certified in color puncture and I
Wow.
use tuning forks,
Yeah.
mostly the acutonics tuning forks, but I've studied with other teachers as well. And both are very time consuming. And I
Wow.
do acupuncture. So there's three things I've got going. How do I combine all of that using frequencies? And so that was what my dissertation was. And I focused primarily on pain, but you can adapt it for any kind of treatment that you use acupuncture. And it's what color and sound do you want to put on what points in what sequence for healing whatever condition you're working on. And the thing that I found most enlightening was uh, light we think of as being different from sound because it's measured differently.
Yeah.
But it's actually just many, many octaves higher than sound. And you can actually assign a key to the keyboard, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. You can assign one of those letters to each of the main colors that you want to use, just like you can the sound. If you're playing the piano, you've got certain keys. You're just way up in a higher octave. And so I had this vision of creating a device that would say, on this point, put this right over that point, and it would tell you when to move it, and it would send the right light and sound down into the device.
Wow.
But um, I'm not an engineer, so I never figured out how to make that work.
Well, I mean, conceptually, though, I mean, we can measure the octaves, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
And we know how to manipulate the octaves
Hmm.
with light. It sounds like light is, I didn't realize that light went actually a higher octave than
Yes.
sound.
Yes.
And so if we can measure it and manipulate it, then there's got to be someone out there who, if it's not already created, it could exist. So that's a genius idea. Because so tell me, when you say that the light is a higher octave, I'm just assuming that the higher the octave is, the higher the vibration is that allows for
Yes.
greater healing. Is that a correct assumption?
Yes. Well, the higher the octave, the more it breaks up structures. And
Okay.
the lower the octave, the more healing. It's kind of like
Hmm.
cold will reduce inflation and inflammation. Inflation, I wish.
We wish.
Inflammation and pain, and then the heat is what heals it. Well, it's the same with the vibration, the really high octaves. So if you use a really high tuning fork, that'll break things up and break up blockages and body armor and things like that. And then the lower, deeper sound is what brings in the healing.
Mm.
So if
So
you
it's a
can combine
combination.
those, yeah, it's pretty magical.
Wow. And so when you're looking at neuropathy, um, what are you doing first? You're doing the higher octave, and then you're moving down the vibration channel into the healing as the treatments go on, or are
Well,
you doing
that's
it
what the
all in one?
microcurrent device does. So the microcurrent device, there's two settings. I have several different devices, but the one I use mostly at this point in time, there's two settings that I will primarily use. So when I first start with a patient, I'll use a setting that is very powerful for pain and moving things and getting things going. And then once I start seeing the improvement and they're out of an acute phase, there's no pain anymore. There's just some numbness left. I switch and I start using solfeggio frequencies. I don't know if you're familiar with solfeggio.
No.
Oh my, oh, that's awesome. I found if you use solfeggio frequencies and you go through the different frequencies, each frequencies heals something different. So you're healing at many different layers. Now
Mhm.
you can get solfeggio music. So I always play solfeggio music while they're on the table. But this is in addition to the music.
Got it. So can you, it sounds like an Italian name, Solfeggio, but what is, how do I spell it? Mhm.
Solfeggio.
Okay,
And it's thousands of, well, whenever the Greeks were over 2,000 years ago.
Greek. Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's very ancient teaching about frequencies. The whole universe, if we can get into some physics here, the
Please.
whole universe is frequency.
Yeah.
The only reason things look solid is because their frequency is so low that it appears solid. But once your third eye opens, you start looking at things and you don't see solid things, you see light. And so when people talk about the light body, what you're seeing is the DNA is actually just light. So if
Mm,
you follow Bruce Lipton, he has some
yeah.
awesome classes, some workshops on it, and he's done research, medical research, where they used what do they call it? It was a type of radioactive isotopes. There you go. They
Yep.
used isotopes in the blood, and then they were photographing it, and they could actually see the channels that the cells communicate with each other through light. So our cells are communicating with light. So there's van, but it should be vein. They should put E on the end for
Got
the
it. Yeah.
energy.
Totally.
Because there's more channels in the body communicating, and some of those channels, if you do an aura photo, our whole energy field around us is part of who we are. And if you look in the brain, all of our memory and everything isn't in the brain. It's
Yeah.
outside of us. And if you do a digital image of the heart area, it's actually bigger than the brain. So we have
Mm,
three brains in the body, right? We have the belly brain, the heart brain, and the mind brain.
yeah.
So the belly brain is where our feelings come from, our emotions, and then the head brain is where our thoughts are coming from, but our heart brain is actually the biggest, and it integrates the feelings in the head.
Yeah.
So when people are acting without thinking, they're just coming from their emotions, their heart isn't integrating. Or
Yeah.
if they're just thinkers and they don't consider their feelings, then they're not integrating the belly brain. So the heart is supposed to integrate those two brains. So then when you get someone who has all three brains integrated, now you have a mature, calm person. And
Mm,
that's when the three brains are integrated. But most of this is coming from the heart. So you learn when you're in metaphysics and really advancing, you start listening through your heart, not through your senses. And that's when the world changes. That's when everything changes. You experience the world very differently. You can see through the veil. You can travel through time. That's what shamans do. They travel through time, and time no longer exists, which is what people talk about in five. They say 5D. I don't like to use the word dimensions because in physics, dimensions has a specific meaning, and that's not what's intended. I call them realms.
well, and this is phenomenal. This is fascinating. So, Einstein thought, maybe we could travel. We have to catch up to the speed of light to time travel, right? But the problem is, as you speed up, the mass starts to accumulate, and you physically can't do it. So what you're saying is, from frequencies or a vibrational perspective, when you say shamans can time travel, and actually I worked with some kahunas in Hawaii, some kind of Hawaiian priests, and they claim the same. And I'm like, okay, well, from a physics perspective, it's just impossible to time travel because your body will just disintegrate when the mass gets sped up that quickly because it just accumulates. And so tell me about it from an energetic perspective, because I'd love to time travel. If you can take us back to like maybe I'd love to see like the 1500s and the Renaissance and, and meet Michelangelo.
Well, time only exists when there's mass. So you
Yeah.
have to let go of mass. So that's
There you
why
go.
when you do a shamanic journey, you lay down because you want the body. So people say you have to raise your vibration. You're actually going to lower the vibration of your body. You want it in delta. That's
Oh,
why
really?
becoming
Okay.
a lucid dreamer is so important, because now your
Yeah.
body is asleep and it releases a hormone, I can never remember the name of it, that literally takes your skeletal muscles and you cannot move. Right?
Mm,
So you want to be in delta but awake. So your brain, you want to be in gamma, but you want your body in delta. So
yeah.
now your body is completely asleep. It's not, now you don't have any mass. And now you can travel in time because you don't have mass. So
Wow.
it's like I've had 5 near-death experiences. And the first time I was actually an atheist at the time,
Yeah.
and I was in surgery, and I thought, all of a sudden I went, why is everybody leaving me? I thought they were leaving me because I was awake during the surgery. They couldn't knock me out. And I thought, why are they? And I was tried to raise my hand, and I realized I didn't have a hand. And then I tried to yell, and I realized I wasn't breathing. I went, wait a minute, what's going on? I realized I was moving away from them. And then I went into this white tunnel. Well, I just had my daughter, and I just thought, no, I'm not leaving. I have a daughter. I'm going to stay. It was later when I got really sick and had more near-death experiences that I realized, oh, I shouldn't be an atheist, because there really is a divine presence. It's not what we think of as the God with a beard on a throne somewhere, but there is a divine presence, a consciousness. And we
Mm,
can tap into that because we're part of it. So
yeah.
once you tap into that, then you can do whatever you want. And like many years ago, I wanted to visit, who started the TM movement? Um, Maharishi. And I wanted to ask him a question, but he was alive at the time and he was living somewhere in Europe. So I thought, well, I'm going to go and ask him a question. So I journeyed to him and asked him my question, and he says, you need to talk to Guru Dev, which was his teacher, which
Mm,
I always really admired his teacher. And I said, that's the way he died is the way I want to die. And I said, okay, but he's dead. How do I talk to him? He says, he's not dead. He's meditating in a cave. And he told me where in the Himalayas to find him. So I journeyed over there, and sure enough, there he was. And I talked to him. And so there are beings like that, very high level beings that are meditating, helping humanity. They're just on the other side of the veil.
mm.
So with our senses, we can't see them. But if we let go of this physical plane actually not existing, then you can see through the veil and you see these other beings that are all around us.
Wow. Okay. And you've experienced that in 5 near-death experiences. I had a patient of mine who wrote a book on, he would interview people who had near-death experiences. And literally, yeah, if you don't believe that there's a higher power out there, then yeah, people are mistaken. I've never, fortunately, never had a near-death experience, but just reading his book, it was phenomenal and apparent to see that there's just a whole nother world out there that we are not aware of. And so much of our life, we're walking around blind, and
Yeah.
if you don't believe in frequencies, well, and you're listening to this show, well, this show is broadcast through frequencies, right?
Yes.
You and I can talk here through frequencies,
But we don't
and
see them.
we don't see them. Yeah. And so it's very interesting because, and you say, healing is all vibration, and
Mhm.
vibration creates a frequency.
Mhm.
And so it's like, man, well, we use it every single day, but it's this invisible power that so many of us are, we never notice it in our life. And so you've had the opportunity to be woken up many times through it. So what is your spiritual practice now these days? I mean, obviously you don't want to have another near-death experience, but you've learned how to travel and meet, like the founder of Transcendental Meditation, and learn some of those things. But what's your day-to-day routine? How often are you time traveling is what I'm getting at.
Well, I'm a big proponent of meditation. Obviously, I wrote a book on it. That's the
Um,
second edition. The first one I wrote in 1999.
um,
Um, I lead meditation groups. I have a drumming circle that I lead. I meditate daily, but I don't just sit down and meditate. I do that, but I try to stay in a meditative state all the time.
Mm.
And to do that, you have to know where your soul is. Well, most people don't even know where their soul is. They can't feel it. So that's one of the things I like to teach people is to feel the soul in your body. Where is it? And for many people, it's below the heart, and you need to bring it up at least to the heart. But I like for people to keep it next to their monad on top, and then just move it down when you need it down. So that's part of my practice is trying to stay in that meditative state 24/7. I say a lot of prayers. I do rituals. I have altars all over the house. My house is like an ashram, so I try to live in that state all the time.
Wow.
So that's what I do because one of the things I teach is how to become a radiant healer. So you
Mm.
don't have to have a healing practice to be a radiant healer. You're just the kind of person that people want to be near because when they're near you, they feel better. They
Yeah.
feel like they're being healed. Like I have a way of standing in line where nobody bangs into me. But I'll have people in front of me rip their head around like, who's behind me? Because they feel my energy.
Yeah.
It's a qigong stance that I was taught. Um, so when you stay like that, bad things don't happen anymore.
Yeah.
You know what's coming. You know what's going to happen. So you can avoid things. You know, oh, today I shouldn't do this, or I should do that, or I should go to work a different way today. And you
Mhm.
may never know why. But I've just learned to always listen to my higher guidance. And that's why I try to stay connected all the time. And then when you're with a patient, especially, sometimes I'll just say something, I don't even know where it came from, but it's coming through me.
Yeah.
And they'll come back later and say, you know, when you said this, it changed my life. And I don't even remember saying it. But that's because it's their soul is coming to my soul and it's just coming through me. It's not from me because, I don't know everything.
Right. Well, my teacher used to, my Japanese teacher used to train us. You know how the insertion tubes and the acupuncture needles are just, they're clear and transparent. She said, you're just the insertion tube.
Right,
And so I've experienced that same thing where I'm, sharing advice with a patient and they're crying and then I'm like, where did that come from? Because I have no idea, but it was not from me. It wasn't like
right,
Reagan's like cut and dry. Here's what Reagan thinks. It's like, no, that was not at all what Reagan thinks. It's what you need. And so,
right.
yeah, those universal messages are really powerful.
Hmm.
And so you do a lot. You build up your life. I mean, if your whole house is like an ashram, you put these triggers in place to remind you that you are a spiritual being having a physical experience, to borrow the I think it's a 12-step phrase. But just thinking about that, I think everybody can do that. Do you coach your
Yes.
patients on becoming healers and coach your patients on how to change their vibration? Um,
Those that are interested come to my classes and they buy my book and they do my workshops and things like that. Some people find me because they know I do the spiritual aspect, so they're interested. Some people, I don't bring it up unless they do. If they bring it up, then we'll go there. Otherwise, I don't, because not everyone is open. So I'll do the energy work in my office while they're on the table. So they don't need to know that I'm doing woo woo stuff if it's not in their belief system. Because some people actually think what you're doing might be bad. It's totally against their belief system. So I work within their belief system. I
yeah,
don't try to force, oh, well, you have to have this energy. No, they're not open to it. They didn't talk about it. I do that separate.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, and that's the beautiful thing about this process. When I first worked with a shaman, I was super skeptical. I was like, this is weird. They're banging all the drums, getting me into this trance and lighting. I can't remember if it was incense or something. And I was just like, what is this? And then once I just relaxed into it, I was like, all right, I'm going to be open-minded here. And then all of a sudden I just had this, like, it was as if someone just like put a blanket on top of me. I got super heavy, and then just the blanket was pulled off, and then I could just like see these flashes of my life and past lives, and all these things came to my consciousness.
Hmm.
And I felt like we were in that trance for about a year, and I came out of it, and it had only been about 30 minutes. But I learned, I mean, all that wisdom just flashed right there in that moment.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. You learn one of the things we learned also was telepathy. So that's one of the things that happens the more you do this work is you become very telepathic and empathic. So I feel what's going on with people. Sometimes people don't tell me you know that. They don't tell you everything.
Right.
Um, and I'll go, well, don't you have this? And they'll look at me like, what? So I have patients that I've been seeing since I was an intern in clinic who stayed with me, and they'll just come in and hold their wrists out and they'll say, you tell me what's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here,
That's,
here, you tell me.
that's the best, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So then I just do their tongue and pulse and feel their energy and go, here's what you need.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And have you found that, I think herbal medicine can be very powerful, very transformative. Even having a ritual of herbal tea has been really powerful in my life.
Hmm.
Do you have any specific herbs that you like to use to help people get more of that kind of transcendental state, or, to lower the vibration or increase it or change it?
I use incense for that. Frankincense is a really good one for
Um,
that. Um, some of the like patchouli. I don't care for patchouli. A lot of darshans and places use patchouli, but I'm not big on that one. But sometimes I'll use frankincense and myrrh together,
and the
um,
essential oils. Yeah.
and the
Okay.
essential oils. I usually use some kind of essential oil on my patients each time. Sometimes I have some sprays, so I'll spray the office with like a lavender or something so that they're calm.
Yeah.
I use white flour on kidney 1 to reground people at the end of the treatment before I don't want anybody lightheaded walking out the door. um, Eucalyptus oil for any kind of chest breathing issues.
Mhm.
Or I'll use Kwanlung oil is another good one
Mm.
for any kind of chest issues, and you can put it on uh, Ren 17.
Yeah.
Um, and then I like Bach flower essences a lot.
Yeah, those are great.
And one day I was helping someone, and I didn't have the particular essence, and I just said, close your eyes and imagine the vibration of this. And she did, and boom, that's all she had to do. So you actually don't need the herbs or the essence if,
Wow.
if they're a meditator and can do that. And you just say, imagine the vibration of this. And they don't even have to know what it is. They'll just imagine it and it'll just come in. And then it
They,
does its trick.
they just 3D print it right there
Right.
with their mind.
Yeah.
3D print, inhale, done. That's
Done. Yeah.
then maybe that's what the future will be like, where we just learn how to get into this deep vibration state, and then instead of having a physical 3D printer, we just have an energetic 3D printer, and we have everything we need right there.
We have that now. It's just people don't realize it. We are
Yeah.
that powerful. We create this universe step by step.
Yeah.
And when we're born, this universe doesn't exist. All they see is light.
Hmm.
And we teach them words, and it's our words. So I'll share this with you. It's just something I'm really big on. Do not use English for meditation.
Hmm.
English is a terrible language, and it pulls you away from your spirituality. It's okay to use for mindfulness. You put little post-it notes around and, little reminders. That's fine for mindfulness, but do
Hmm.
not use it for meditation. You want to use a sacred language. And most people don't know Sanskrit or ancient Hebrew,
I
but
barely know English, so this is going to be challenging.
well, Mandarin is around, and you can learn Mandarin. And the
Really?
Mandarin numbers, especially, resonate in the body. So you
Hmm.
can use Mandarin, but I like to use old Sanskrit chants. Uh,
Okay.
Namo Amitofu. If you chant Namo Amitofu 10 times over someone who is dying,
Yeah.
then the Buddha um, Amitofu or Amito comes in and he brings in Kuan Yin and the Bodhisattva of wisdom, and then they will take the soul up into the Pure Land.
Okay.
So it's
And
a nice way to help someone transition so they don't leave some astral bodies behind.
would you do this with someone who's alive?
Well, I chant it all the time if I'm feeling any kind of negative feeling like fear or something. It's like, where is this coming from? I'll start chanting Namo Amitofu and it goes away. So it's really good to use all the time, but it's specifically 10 times for someone who is dying
Got it.
to help them transition without fear, because you're actually not dying. You're just
Yeah,
leaving this body behind.
it's a transition, and you've experienced it 5 times. So
Well,
that,
one time was with my shaman training. You can't become a shaman and graduate without having an NDE, so they induce one.
oh, really?
Yeah.
I'm inducing it like anesthesia induction or
No,
trans.
well, I'm not allowed to say how they did it. We were sworn to secrecy, but I know in South American cultures they use drugs. We didn't use drugs, but there are ways you can induce an NDE.
Wow. I'd imagine with holotropic breathing, which I've done a considerable amount of, you can get in that state. So
Yeah.
so when you say without drugs, I'd imagine it had to have something to do with breathing. And you can't say it, but I'm creating fiction right in my head right now. So
Well,
let's
my next three NDEs were very, very different. There was no white tunnel. And I always thought, maybe I'm mad at I don't understand, because I didn't have that white tunnel after that. But then I was listening to Daniel Brinkley, and he said only Americans have the white tunnel, that in other parts of the world it's different. And I went, that explains it. Because I only had it when I was an atheist. It was the only time there was a white tunnel. So people will have different experiences depending on their belief system and their values.
really.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what the author, my patient, who wrote this book on past life experiences. Yeah, people who were Christian had a certain experience. People who were Buddhist had a specific experience. People who were Hindu had a different experience.
Mhm.
Islam. I mean, it was crazy just to see
Mhm.
how our consciousness kind of framed
Mhm.
the subconscious experience in this, kind of transcendental place. And I thought it is really interesting. So if we look at this as we kind of come to an end, and we tie this all back to neuropathy, the thing you said that I feel was really, I mean, you've said so many amazing things, but the one thing that I look at tying it all in is when you look at the feet in neuropathy from a metaphysical perspective, it's the feet help you move forward with confidence in life, and they give you direction and have, purpose. You could say your destiny is manifest in the kidneys. So your destiny is like planted firmly on the earth,
Mhm.
and fear is that emotion that gets in the way of it the most. And so if we say, if we summarized everything, we could look at that. The metaphysical experience could be the most important part of this healing journey for neuropathy.
Mhm.
Um, but how would you kind of put this all together? All your, the meditation, the shamanic healing you do with the vibration. What does it look like when someone comes in to work with you on all of these levels?
What does it look like? I'm not sure what you're asking. I
Take
can.
imagine I have neuropathy and I'm coming in, but I need to go deeper and work on these things. So maybe just walk somebody through what the experience would be like in working with you when they've got neuropathy.
Well, what I do is I try to find out what they're not telling me.
Yeah.
This is especially true for cancer patients. They come in, and when they start crying and say, I've never said this to anyone before, we've got them. Now their cancer will go away and they'll be cured. With neuropathy, it's more difficult because there's so many different layers that cause the problem. But I look at things a little bit different. I look at love versus fear. Those are feelings. Everything else is an emotion. So love versus fear is in the heart, and all the emotions are in the belly brain. So when you have fear, you're not in love. If you're not in love, you're not grounded, you're not in touch with the earth, you've got all kinds of problems. So not everyone that comes in is in a state of fear. Some people are in a state of anger, or they're now anger, that's the liver, but anger hides everything else. So you
Yeah.
have to clear the anger to get at what's underneath. You can't even see it. So it just depends on what I see, how deep I need to go. And for neuropathy, I find that people are just not grounded and they're not in touch with who they are and they're not taking care of themselves.
Wow.
So we've got to get them on the right diet, on the right thinking. It's very complicated because it's so layered. Because neuropathy comes later. You have many other issues before you got neuropathy.
Yeah.
So you've got to deal with if you know anything about homeopathy, homeopathy works backwards. It's like you had something happen as a child, and then you had one thing layer on top of another. So you get the right homeopathic pellets or whatever remedy,
Mhm.
and you start going back in time. So you'll ask the patient, okay, where are you now? Well, it's like, I had this problem when I was 30. Okay, keep going. Okay, and a few weeks later, well, now I had this problem when I was 20. So you know you're on the right track because they keep getting younger. And then they, oh, I had this when I was 6. And now they're cured. And that's how I look at healing the neuropathy. You're going backwards in time, trying to heal what's the current thing, and then keep going back, and then finally you can get rid of the neuropathy.
Yeah. Well, that is so powerful. And then if somebody wants to work with you in your meditation courses, which just from what you said, your physical clinic is not yet opened, and we did have one of our members here asked about when it will be open and where. And then so maybe you could talk about that, and then talk about how people can work with you virtually.
Well, I do take online appointments. Um, so I have dancing bear appointments, so you can make an online appointment, and then we would work through Zoom. I have, if you go to Meetup, there's transformation through meditation, and we meet Tuesdays at 6 Arizona time, which is in the summer. We don't have daylight savings, so in the summer we're on Pacific time. It gets confusing.
Yes,
So
it does.
you have to look for Mountain Time Phoenix, not Mountain Time Denver.
Right.
And so I have that weekly, and then I have an app going live, hopefully today, and then I'll have lots of classes that I'm offering in there. And if they get hold of me, they can go to dancingbearacademy.com and sign up for my newsletter, and they'll find out when I start releasing my new classes. So I have one class that I've taught. Well, there's classes that I've been teaching for years, but this is the first time I've taught it online. So I taught it and it just ended the beginning of June. Probably in July I'll teach it again. And then I have other classes that I'll be doing. I'm partnering with another academy, so some of my classes may be offered there as well.
Wow. And what's that academy?
Um, that's a good
Yeah.
question.
Well, it's okay. So go to dancingbearacademy.com, and then you can do a /free gift offer. And then Dr. Lawrence, I really appreciate you offering that to our audience. I think the work you're doing is just phenomenal. It's so fascinating just to think of all the possibilities. Just in this conversation we had, you've opened up all of our minds and ideas, and taken us on a great journey. So thank you for your amazing work and
Thank you.
healing spirit.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being here. I appreciate it.
You got it. Take care.
Awesome show. Thank you guys so much. And thank you, Dr. Beverly Lawrence, for joining us today. And Regan Archibald, well done. We'll be back same time, same place next week, everybody. And don't forget the Health Accelerator Challenge of the week. Stay hydrated. Half your body weight in ounces of water, along with good minerals, electrolytes. So make sure you get that done, and we'll see you 4:30 on the Health Accelerator course. If you're not registered for that, check that out at acueastwest.com/hack. You can also find some good sources of supplements from Regan at thesmartmedicine.com. So go take a look at that. There's some really good stuff that Reagan's been able to have his influence on. So have an amazing day, everybody. Love you all so much. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.